What's up? This is Rebel Radio.
What up? What up? This is DJ Newmark.
This is Peanut Butter Wolf.
It's your boy. It's okay.
Keep checking out Rebel Radio.
Rebel Radio.
This is Rebel Radio.
We're in the place right here. Rebel Radio is going down.
Would you say Rebel Radio?
Oh, wait. Let's do it again.
Rebel Radio.
What's up, Rebels? Welcome back to Rebel Radio, the weekly show where I talk to the rebels that are shaping youth culture. We find out how they do it, why they do it, and what you can do to get a little piece of the pie for yourself. We're also the only show to bring you new music every week from our friends over at EDM.com. I'm your host, Josh Levine, and my guest in studio today is Laura Cathcart Robbins. She's an old friend, and we start off the episode kind of catching up on some of our history. Laura is a great writer, blogger, storyteller, talking about her experiences with addiction, recovery, relationships, really just human issues that we all go through in different ways in our own lives. I love Laura's stories for her vulnerability and positivity. She kind of blends those two in a really interesting way. Laura's launching her own podcast any day now, The Only One in the Room. Make sure you check that out. And most importantly, check out this interview with Laura Cathcart Robbins right after our EDM.com track of the week.
Yeah, cocaine, yeah. Close your eyes if you don't wanna see it. Sauced up cause I bossed up. Middle finger we toss up. They don't know what it cost us. Close your eyes if you don't wanna see it.
That was Dimes with Don't Wanna See It, the EDM.com track of the week. If you like that one, get over to EDM.com, check out more new music. And now let's get into the interview with Laura Cathcart Robbins.
They don't wanna see me live. Close your eyes if you don't wanna see it. They don't wanna see me shine. I don't even give them time.
Well, I'm so excited to do this with you.
I know, me too.
We should talk about how we know each other.
Yeah.
And then I want to dig into everything that you're doing and how it all came to happen.
I was trying to remember how we met.
Me too.
And I'm sure I pitched you.
No, so I think so you were a music publicist.
Right.
And I was a manager at that time, a manager and a journalist.
Yeah, I mean, it might have been.
So I thought we hired you for Bosco, who I was managing.
Yes.
Who I just had on the show recently.
Yes, oh my goodness.
And so that would have been 94.
94. Yeah.
And so I don't remember who introduced us or whatever.
I don't either. But I remember I met you and Cheo, Tracy McGregor, and
who I just saw on the R. Kelly, on the Leah documentary.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I saw Tracy being interviewed.
I saw her the other day. We had breakfast. We had breakfast like a year ago.
Uh-huh. But
I see her every once in a while because she lives near me in the valley, and her kid goes to the school right near our house.
Nice.
And then what was her name at Rap Pages?
Sheena Lester.
Yes.
Yeah.
So I met all of you like around the same time.
Nice.
And kind of cultivated this little network of.
Sure.
You were all younger than me.
Right.
You know,
not much.
Not much, but at the time,
it
seemed like you guys were kids, and I was this, 27-year-old.
Sure.
Who, kind of, was just, I don't know, like you guys. It seemed like you guys were the up and coming, group, which you were.
It felt like that at the time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, well, look at what's happened with you, what's happening with Cheo.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know what Tracy's doing, but there was this, it was this really cool camaraderie.
Yeah.
I felt like we had.
Yeah, I don't know how much that exists now. We've talked about that, from time to time on the show, how, to me at least, that felt like a really special moment in culture and business where there was just this community.
Yeah.
That was really kind of helping each other. Everybody was on their own path, but we were sort of all in it together at the same time. I don't know if that exists so much anymore.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know.
You'll have to see with your kids if they form those type of units.
Yeah. They, at that time, you guys were my introduction, and Steve, to underground hip hop.
Mm-hmm.
I had, kind of been raised on mainstream hip hop.
Yeah.
except for because I was in the Bay Area.
Right.
Too Short.
Of course.
You know, I had one of his mixtapes that he sold out of his trunk near the
sure.
Coliseum.
So wait, what city did you grow up in?
Well, so up until age 12, almost 13, I was in Cambridge, Mass.
Okay.
But then we moved to Berkeley,
Oh, wow.
and I went to Berkeley High.
Wow.
And I was there until I was, not at Berkeley High, but in Berkeley until I was 20. I turned 21 in Florida. I moved there after that.
Wow.
So for that, all those teenage years, all the high school years, I was in Berkeley. And
Crazy time in the Bay.
oh, it was wonderful.
I think it's always a crazy time in the Bay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was just so cool. It was
Yeah.
so diverse. I was friends with Huey Newton, and his son Ronnie, who committed suicide a few years after I met him. But so I was connected to the Black Panther Party for Self-Defense,
Yeah.
which he wasn't an active part of anymore, but he was still this legend.
Sure. Yeah.
And you know, and E40 was coming up then. Like, it was all this kind of swell of commentary on where we were. And I had been raised in all independent schools, always the only Black kid. My parents were not church-going Black people. They were intellectual artists,
Yeah.
hippies.
Yeah.
So this was brand new exposure for me to Black people at a level that I had never experienced it.
Yeah.
And I loved it. I loved everything about it.
Well, I know you write and talk about race and your experience as a Black woman, and I want to get into that. But I'm curious. You know, I've had the experience because I grew up in San Francisco, right after you.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
I left there in '89. But you know, it's taken me years to understand that the world is segregated. Because growing up in San Francisco and Berkeley, right, it's just not.
No.
And yeah, there's problems. There's still problems with race for sure, even in those communities. But it's a very different experience of just like, there is no racial majority.
Right.
And I don't know, it took me a long time. I came to UCLA and was like, what? This is weird. And it took me a long time to kind of understand that our little bubble was not the world.
Yeah. I felt exactly the same. My friends in high school were Black, Filipino, white, mixed race, Japanese.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm thinking of individuals.
Yeah. Same here.
And we were just, you know, there was the way that we assess each other now, or here, in 2019 in this society where we are right now, it was much different from the way we assessed each other then.
Yeah.
And my first experience with racism was when I moved to Florida when I was 20.
Of course.
And I was denied service at a nail salon.
Wow.
And you know, people, I'd be walking. No one walks in Florida. First of all, everybody thought I was a prostitute because I was walking. Like, that was crazy. But I would walk and people would like yell, "Nigger, go home," out of the window. And I'm like, what?
Wow.
Who are they talking to?
Yeah.
And yeah, so I got just very subtle forms of racism, overt forms. You know, I wondered if maybe I hadn't been aware of it before, but I hadn't encountered it that way.
I mean, that's not going to happen in Berkeley.
No.
If it would, it'd be like an incident.
Yeah, it would be really weird, and
Yeah.
that person probably wouldn't have belonged there.
Yeah.
So yeah, that was my first, like, the skin I'm in, the hair that I have, creates fear in people. I think that's the basis of any kind of hatred is fear.
Okay.
And for whatever reason, they don't want me around because of that. And
Right.
it has nothing to do with my smile or my personality or my experience
Yeah.
or who I love or any of that. It's just, you look this way, we don't want you around. And that was scary and humbling. It made me very aware that Florida is part of the South, which I didn't realize before. I thought of it as East Coast.
Yeah.
And also I didn't want to live there. I didn't want to. The other thing, just really quickly, in Florida is there weren't very many black people who looked like me.
Mm-hmm.
If they did, they were usually from the Caribbean or Cuba.
Yeah, yeah.
So I would get the Spanish-speaking salespeople sent over to me in stores.
Right.
And even among the black people in Florida, who are mainly of Caribbean descent, I think, there just wasn't much segregation. There wasn't much mixing,
Yeah.
And so I stood out again, doubly stood out.
Sure.
By looking the way that I do.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And speaking the way that I do.
Yeah.
Which was different.
Yeah, I'm sure.
Mm-hmm.
It's funny. So one last connection before we get into your story. So I came to some party at your house.
Yeah.
I brought Mike Karen, whose building we're sitting in, with me.
Wow.
And we saw Shaq in a yellow suit.
Yes.
And I tried to offer Mike $50 if he would run and bump Shaq into the pool.
Oh no.
And pretend it was an accident, and then we'd run out of there. But he didn't.
He would have really
He didn't
enjoyed
take me
that
up.
too.
Oh, I'm sure he would have. Yeah. He was like standing near the pool, and I was like, just run as hard as you can, knock him in the pool, and then we'll just run out of here.
Wow.
He didn't take me up on that, as you know. Anyway, so I met your friend, who, like the scene in The Godfather, I was struck by the thunderbolt, and we ended up dating for 4 years.
Wait, which friend?
That was Monica.
Oh, yes, Monica. Yes.
And one of my great relationships that taught me so much in my life. And for a little while there, I was sort of part of a weird club that I didn't feel all that comfortable in, which was Jewish Hollywood guys dating black women. And so, we end up at a bunch of house parties together.
Yep.
Which was just a funny, I don't know, it was just a weird cultural place to be.
Isn't that interesting, though?
Yeah.
Because it is kind of a club.
It is, and so, again, for me, growing up in San Francisco, I had friends and dated women of all races and ethnicities, and never, there were a bunch of guys who their thing was to date black women.
Yeah.
Which is, none of my business what they want to do, but I sort of found myself in those rooms and thought that was just a strange.
But I also felt like there was like this pocket of Jewish men, and there may still be, who were really not just enamored with black culture, but in it.
Yeah.
Where it's the music of black culture is their music.
Totally.
And so it makes sense to be attracted to whoever is attracted to that same stuff, which is, black women.
Yeah.
And to be attracted to black women.
Yeah. Yeah, no, you're totally right. I don't mean to make it
Yeah.
solely like a sex thing. I think it was a cultural thing. And I was actually having this argument with somebody the other day saying that, he was trying to make the argument that the point of having a diverse workforce is to be able to relate to the diverse customer base.
Yes.
And I kind of said, I get that, but hip hop is a great example where it was built by blacks and Jews.
Mm-hmm.
And
it sure was.
right?
Yeah.
I mean, in a lot of cases, I don't know if you had this experience, but the sort of black establishment that was really invested in R&B was very anti-hip hop.
Yes.
Like
Yes.
they were too bougie for that, and it was offensive to them, and but there was a bunch of Jewish guys who were invested in the culture and more than willing to embrace that. And so I don't sort of believe in diversity in that same way. I believe I don't know how to explain it, because I think we've had this unique experience where diversity just is.
Yeah, and I do a lot of work in diversity at the board level for the school board that I sit on.
Oh, cool.
And diversity is just numbers. Is how many people, but all the other stuff is multiculturalism and inclusion and affinity and like.
And I think a lot of that's lost in this conversation about about diversity,
Yes.
which, baby steps, maybe.
And also back to your point about hip hop being created and built and, kind of given to the world by Jews and blacks. And I think that definitely the bougie blacks or the R&B, people who were invested in R&B it was like, I don't know, like rock and roll was, for white people when it first came out. And it was like, what are you doing? Listen to that noise.
Sure.
Like, here's the real,
Yeah.
And I think that the Jewish people that were a part of that not only liked it and were invested in it, but they also had the foresight to see that this was money.
Mm-hmm.
Like, there's an
Yeah,
audience
absolutely.
for this.
Mm-hmm.
And, we've not touched them, really, right?
Right.
Because, it was an awakening for me.
Yeah.
At 14, that's when I first heard it.
What was the record?
Rapper's Delight.
Uh-huh.
Rapper's
Mine
Delight.
too.
Yeah. I mean, that was, I was thinking, because I know you always ask people what was the first album or first record.
So that wasn't the first record you bought?
It wasn't the first record I bought, but it was definitely the one that had the most significance. I'm not really sure what the first record was. I was given a lot of records by my dad and my stepfather.
Yeah.
I was given John Coltrane really early.
Nice.
What's Going On, the Marvin Gaye album by my dad.
Mm-hmm.
Early. My mom listened to Carole King and the Beatles and Crosby, Stills, Nash and Young. I saw the album in the bathroom when I went. And so I had this really kind of eclectic exposure to music.
Yeah.
And I loved Donna Summer. I loved Barry Manilow. Barry Manilow might have been my first record.
Is that right?
Yeah. It might have been the first album I bought.
I just remember my grandmother was into Barry Manilow and Neil Diamond.
Yeah.
For some reason, they went together in her mind. And then I had a cousin who's like, he's probably your age, so just ahead of me, maybe.
Yeah.
And he was into that. And my grandmother used to always tell the story that he couldn't get dates because he was into that kind of music.
Yeah.
I think that's not why he couldn't get dates. I don't think that had anything to do with it now as I got to know him.
Yeah.
But that's my association with Barry Manilow.
It's not sexy. It's not sexy to like Barry
Not
Manilow, to listen to his music. But
I've seen what is it, Sweet Caroline? I've seen what that record does to people when it comes on.
Yeah.
And you just kind of can't not sing it.
Right. Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
That's true. So, it was, I don't remember what the first record I bought was, but when Rapper's Delight came out, and another friend, Monica, we sat on the back of the F bus to and from our acting class in San Francisco, and she made me memorize it. And so that's all we did for like a whole summer was just every word. I can still recite every word. Yeah.
We won't stop you.
No.
So, and then how did you find yourself in the music business?
Just briefly what happened was I was working for an entertainment publicist.
Okay.
Named Prudence Baird. She had the Baird Company, and they were corporate entertainment. And I was dating Brian, who I then later married, Brian Robbins, and his best friend was Steve Rifkind, who was just starting Loud Records.
Yeah.
I think he had just gotten his deal with RCA at that point, and he needed some help with getting the word out on his artists.
Yeah.
And I think then it was the Alcoholics and Mobb Deep, maybe. He didn't have Exhibit yet.
Right.
Wu-Tang was happening, but it hadn't happened yet.
Yeah.
Like the deal.
Yeah,
Wu-Tang had happened.
Yeah.
But so it was fledgling. And so I wanted to, I started bringing in clients. I wanted to become a partner. She didn't want me to become a partner because she wanted to have a baby and kind of slow the business down. So Brian, who was, he was we had just been dating then, and he's like, if you want to go out on your own, like that's what you should do,
Yeah.
and I'll help.
Yeah.
You know, not financially, which would have been great, but he helped connect me to people. And like my girl's a publicist.
Yeah.
She's handling, you know, all of Loud Records now, which,
Right.
you know, this is like 3 months later, and by that time they might have had the Wu-Tang Clan.
Yeah.
And so it started, like RCA hired me to do some stuff, and then
Right.
Universal hired me, and Sony Music hired me. Only to do urban, my air quotes that no one can see, but
No, we have video.
oh, that's right, yeah. So only to do urban.
Yeah.
I never got to do anything mainstream for any of them, but by
Well,
the-
is that?
yeah.
I mean, so I don't know if that's because you were black, but I also think that, you know, especially at that time. I mean,
yeah,
definitely not now, but at that time, you know, the media outlets were very different.
yes,
Right,
Yes.
you know, and whenever like a Rolling Stone or a Spin would do something on a hip hop act, it was like this,
big deal.
yeah,
Yeah.
right. It was either super weird left field thing, or it was, you know, a massive, you know, it was a Public Enemy or,
Yeah.
you know, Beastie Boys, something like that.
No, I mean, it was. I had a plethora of places that I could go to,
Right.
but they were all, you know, if you ask the average Joe on the street, they had never heard of any of them.
Absolutely.
And you know, and remember, what's his name, J.R. Reynolds
Mm-hmm.
from Variety.
Oh, Variety. Yeah.
Billboard. Was it Billboard?
Billboard.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So he did like the Black Beat. So
Right.
he was my go-to
Yeah.
journalist there. And but I was absolutely hired to do urban publicity because I was black, but also because I had this connection.
Sure.
Because I'm sure it's much different now. I was a publicist before social media.
Right.
But at that time, you know, you had to consistently hone all these connections. I had to read everything.
Yeah.
I had to read every magazine, every newspaper. I had to know exactly what journalists liked and what they didn't like. I took them out to lunch. I took them out to breakfast. Took them out to dinner. Invited them to parties. And you created these relationships. So when people hired me, they were buying my relationships.
Right.
And I worked really hard for them, and not a lot of people had them. I was the only black entertainment publicist, single publicist, in Los Angeles at that time.
Wow.
There just wasn't anybody else, entertainment,
Yeah.
doing what I did. Yeah, so eventually the word got out and everybody started hiring me, but only, again, for urban.
Was there a moment when you had like a big break?
I think when Spielberg hired me for Amistad,
That's huge.
yeah, I mean, it was DreamWorks,
Yeah.
but he said, let's bring her in,
Nice.
and that was a great interview. I was so nervous. I have no recollection of it.
Really?
I must have said the right shit because I got the job, but I do not
Yeah.
remember. I mean, I remember what he looked like. Debbie Allen was there
Oh, cool.
because she was a producer on the
Oh,
movie.
cool.
I think Geffen might have been there too.
Yeah.
And I remember thinking at one point, you're talking too fast. Slow it down. Slow it down. And I had a book, a portfolio,
Yeah, sure.
right? And with
Yeah.
all my clippings in it.
Yeah.
And that was great. And then...
That's what we used to do, even as writers. We'd send around our clips.
our clips.
Yeah.
Wow.
Crazy.
When Dr. Dre left Death Row and was starting Aftermath, Steven hooked me up with him. And I went and met with him. He had offices in the Valley.
Right.
Pit bulls and security. And it was like weird and nice and boxes.
Right.
And like it was all just starting. And
Sounds right.
yeah. And that was a really cool moment for me, meeting him, really understanding the gravity of that moment. Like I and the rest of our world anyway had been following exactly what was going on with Biggie and Tupac and Suge and all of that. And then to be able to sit there across the desk from him and him saying, I'm starting this new thing.
Yeah.
I need people I can trust. Steven says I can trust you.
Nice.
And I was just like, wow, that's amazing. And I did the launch and like probably 3 or 4 months. And then whoever, I forgot, Aftermath was umbrellaed under. Do you remember?
No, I don't remember.
Well, whoever they were umbrellaed under, they
Might have
took
been
over the publicity.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So those were 2 kind of standout moments for me,
Yeah.
where I was like, is that surreal point? I'm 27, 28 years old,
Mm-hmm.
being trusted,
Mm-hmm.
you know, by Steven Spielberg with his baby project, because, you know, no one wanted to fund Amistad, which
Right.
is why he waited till he went to DreamWorks to do it.
Wow.
And then, you know, with Dr. Dre and that was pretty amazing.
So what does that do for you when people like that express their trust in you?
Oh, so just a little bit back. So, yeah, I went to Berkeley High, but I didn't get past the 10th grade.
Mm.
I stopped going to high school. I kept going to school. I just stopped going to classes.
Okay.
So nobody really knew that I had dropped out.
What do you mean you kept going to school?
Well, it was an open campus.
Okay.
And everybody had different periods where
Yeah.
they were in and out, and people had like, you know, breaks for, you know, 2 or 3 periods
Right.
at a time. So we
So
would
you went
hang
to school
out.
to see friends?
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
I just kept going. I didn't tell my parents.
Yeah.
They found out eventually.
I imagine.
Yeah. And it wasn't terrible, but they were just like, you either have to go to school or get a job.
Right.
So eventually I got a job. I had 3 jobs. But so I didn't finish high school.
Can I ask why did you drop out of school?
I'm not exactly sure.
Mm.
There was a lot of chaos and violence at home then. My stepfather had cheated on my mother. They were violent.
Mm.
I was feeling bereft and lost, you know, and
Yeah.
I had gone to independent schools all the way up to high school. Berkeley High had 3,000 kids. I had
Mhm.
never been in a school with over like 200 kids.
Right.
And just given a class schedule and then making my way around this huge campus, and the expectation of me, was that I would have learned the way the other kids had learned, which was in Martin Luther King Junior High School,
Mhm.
and then whatever elementary school every other kid went to.
Right.
I didn't learn that way, you know, and math and science were just beyond me.
Mm.
Like, I couldn't get it. I couldn't get it. It never occurred to me to get help or get a tutor because I never needed it before.
Mm-hmm.
I'd always done really well in my setting. So somewhere in there, I missed enough classes because I wasn't prepared, didn't have
Right.
the homework,
Sure.
so that I just didn't return again.
Yeah.
And I think because things were so chaotic at home that it wasn't noticed. And
Yeah.
I wanted to keep up the pretense that everything was okay, so my mother didn't have to worry about me, that she could just worry about what was happening there. And they got divorced right after that. I was 16 when they got divorced.
Mm-hmm.
So they were in the end of their marriage at that point.
Yeah.
And
What was the job you got?
I had 2 jobs at first. I worked at a sandwich shop making these really amazing sandwiches
Uh-huh.
with like fresh baked bread.
So good.
And then I worked at the Berkeley sauna.
Oh, wow.
And really, I just had to clean the rooms and then work the front desk there. And then eventually I worked at Skates on the Bay.
Okay.
Do you remember that? It was like
No.
in Emeryville
Oh,
on
wow.
the pier. I think it's still there.
We didn't make it to the East Bay very much.
Yeah, yeah. And it's like this fancy restaurant.
Mm-hmm.
It's not, but then it seemed like it was
Right.
fancy.
Yeah.
And it was right on the water.
Oh,
And so
cool.
I was a waitress there, sandwich maker, and worked at the Berkeley sauna.
Okay.
Never went to college.
Uh-huh.
I took courses in junior college, some courses,
Mm-hmm.
but whenever it got to math and science, I was done. So I was like, I'm out.
All right.
So back to your
Yeah.
question, when people trusted me with these really big projects, I felt, one, like it was surreal, it was amazing, it validated me, and the other thing I felt was fraudulent because nobody knew that I hadn't gone to college or finished high school.
Yeah.
I had a lie about a school that I went to, which I figured nobody would ever double check. In fact, Sony Music did when they wanted to hire me.
Oh, wow.
That was bad. And they're like, we don't show you ever attending that school, let alone getting a degree. And I was like, oh, you can check that? That sucks. So it was a really hard duality.
Yeah.
It was amazing and it was scary at the same time. And then, so when I got married and got pregnant right away with Miles, I went to work immediately dismantling the company that I built. Because I think part of me just really understood that I was going to be exposed on a more public level eventually. Or at least I feared that. Maybe I didn't know. Maybe I was just scared of that.
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, I would have told you probably at that point nobody would care anymore because then you had all these accomplishments that didn't matter.
Right. Yeah.
But it doesn't matter. Like that fear lingers no matter what. Yeah.
Yeah, and looking, I mean, I would have told myself that now.
Right.
Like, come on, Laura, nobody cares.
Yeah.
But at the time, it seemed like this huge looming thing. Yeah.
Interesting.
So it was wonderful and terrible, both at the same time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, so that was when you were having your first son.
Yes.
So, how long have you been sort of not working is not the right way to say that.
Yeah. Well, I stopped working then. That was 90. I had Miles in 98. So before he was born, I had dismantled the company.
Yeah.
Got everybody jobs. Everybody that worked for me got a job.
Cool.
And I have not worked for a living since then, you know, but I started writing.
Yeah.
Which gives me an occupation and a daily
Right.
discipline.
So let's talk about that. First of all, why did you start writing?
So I've always written. That's actually why Prudence Baird hired me at the Baird Company, because the person that she had hired wasn't able to write press releases. And I was like, well, let me take a look at it. I can do that because this is simple. This is formulaic. I can figure this out.
Yeah.
And so I can write. I can write those. I wrote bios. I can write, you know, pitches. I'd always journaled since I was a little kid. Wrote short stories. Ebony Junior magazine.
Oh, cool.
Gave me a Writer of the Year award
Oh,
when
cool.
I was like 10.
Nice.
And I'm sure they're not around anymore.
Probably not.
Probably not.
Maybe they're an Instagram channel.
They might be. That would be pretty cute. So you know what happened, and I write a lot about both these things. But what happened was, after my kids were born and they were little, and I was raising them, and my now ex-husband was kind of off shooting movies because he was a director, turning producer at that time. I started taking pills to get to sleep, and I got really addicted to them, and that lasted a long time. My management of them lasted a long time, and then when it was unmanageable, also lasted a long time.
Yeah.
And that was, you know, kind of signaling the beginning of the end of my marriage. It wasn't everything that brought it to a close, but it was a lot of it. It's not a way to get closer to somebody, to be, you know, embroiled in addiction.
Can imagine.
And, you know, if I had any space, time, energy, and love, it was for my kids. I did everything at that point just to be okay, like well, to not be in withdrawal, and so that I could be around for my kids. So that's what brought me to the end of my marriage. So my marriage was 13 years. He and I We had dated for 4 years before, so we were together for about 17 years. And at the end of that, I was, and lost isn't the right word. I just didn't have anything anymore. And he had discovered my journals, which is actually how he found out how bad the addiction was. And so I didn't trust myself to write anything down anymore. I didn't trust that it wouldn't be read and exposed. So I didn't write for a while. And then when I did start writing, it was kind of just cathartic writing, like getting out on paper how I felt, how weird this was, how hard this was. I chose to get sober. I went to treatment and got sober. That's where I met Scott. He checked in an hour after I did.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So
That's
I've been divorced for 10 years. I've been sober for over 10 years.
Yeah.
And he and I have been together for over 10 years.
Nice.
And so yeah, I just started writing about what that was like, about the lies I told growing up, about the lies I told about not graduating, about, that this kind of creation that I had made that I tried to live up to. That was part me, part my authentic self, but also a fabrication as well that I thought would be better, more easily accepted by people. And, and part of that was I am, this great wife. And I might have been a great wife. I'm a great girlfriend, right? But but I was not the wife that I kind of sold to Brian.
Okay.
I'm not domestic. I'm not like the social light. I am not someone who enjoys decorating or putting on a party, but I kind of hoped that I could be for him. And I kind of sold myself that way. And I, he had a way of seeing people that was favorable. He's very charming. And really wonderful, when he likes you. And I saw the people that he liked and how he regarded them, and I wanted to be like that. He didn't say, you need to do this, this, and this.
Sure.
But I saw that he admired so-and-so, and she's an amazing housekeeper, and so-and-so does all her own decorating, and this woman, is like the best mom and the best wife, because they go out on date nights, and she's always put together. So I tried to incorporate all those things that he admired into my personality and be that. And that's where I departed and needed, I think, the pills and alcohol to help with that departure.
Okay.
So writing, coming to get to know myself authentically, probably for the first time, was what the writing was about. And then, in the recovery community, you tell your story a lot. And people, when I tell my story, they're like, you should write that down. Like, that's an amazing story.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking, it's like everybody else's story here. But for some reason, the stories that I told seem to land well, or in a different way. So I started writing them. I started taking writing classes.
Cool.
So I wasn't just writing for myself now, but writing.
And was that with a purpose in mind?
Not at first.
Okay.
At first, I think I was just taking them because I just wanted to be better at it. But then I started taking classes that made me want to get my work out there, and really to write a book. That's what I thought. I should write this as a book. This is a great book.
Yeah.
And then, I took a book proposal class and took some more classes that are geared to helping you write chapters, memoir classes. And I kind of got my book proposal out there, and it was just rejected on all fronts. Like, everybody was like, we don't know who you are.
Right.
The memoirs are the most difficult thing to sell unless you are Michelle Obama.
Right.
We're not going to be able to get you on bookshelves.
Wow.
So you must go out there and get some articles published. do whatever you can to make a name for yourself, so
Yeah.
that you have Instagram followers, so that I can Google you, and more comes up than just.
So let's talk about that. But there's something, hearing you talk. We talked earlier about the environment you grew up in,
Yeah.
and sort of not fitting in certain ways, right? And again, how we grew up in this sort of very unique bubble.
Yeah.
And then later in life, you sort of told yourself a story that was maybe partly true about how you fit into that environment. Are those things connected?
Oh, sure. The departure from who I was to the space between who I was and the story that I told began very early on, and I
think sorry to cut you off. I think that's true for all of us.
Yeah, probably. I think mine was more, I can't think what the word is, but when my stepfather came into my life, and my mother and I have talked about this, he hated me. I was 5.
Yeah.
And the stuff that I was and what I did just rubbed him the wrong way, and created this negative atmosphere, this toxic kind of atmosphere in my house. So I edited that. Who I was immediately edited down. So by the time I met Brian, I was very well practiced in editing myself.
Right.
But then, so yeah, that was definitely, they're all connected in that way. But yeah.
So editing yourself is an important skill.
It is. It can be.
5-year-olds are terrible, first of all. Let's just start there, right? They're horrible people. I'm just kidding. But
I was great.
No,
I
I'm
was
sure
a
you
great
were. I'm sure you
5-year-old.
were lovely. No, but like but that's true, right? That to be able to edit yourself, you know,
It's absolutely a skill.
you can't just blurt out or act out everything that comes to mind, right? Because we have to live in some type of society and
Right.
get along, right? And so, but obviously it can go too far, and it can go the wrong place. How have you, as you've gotten more practiced and skilled at this, what's the right balance?
I think the right balance for me is if I'm editing to conceal something, to keep a secret from you, to manage your response to me, rather than just editing because I'm being polite, civilized.
Right.
I'm kind of going with the flow of whatever is going on. It's a tricky line for me, but for me, I think the bottom line is I really have to watch dishonesty, because it's a very slippery slope for me. So where somebody who doesn't have this issue may be able to edit themselves more and be fine,
Okay.
I have to be more mindful of it, because it can get into that place, and very quickly I can get lost. And where's the truth or the reality of where I am versus.
So now seeing the work that you're putting online,
Yeah.
and I've watched a bunch of the talks, which are amazing. The Starbucks story was
Yeah.
great.
Yeah, thank
All great stuff, and I've read a bunch of the articles. You seem to be just incredibly open. I would guess you have no fear of revealing yourself.
Yeah. It's interesting. Most people say when they read the articles, especially, and my blog, which that was the other part of creating a name for myself, was
Sure.
to start a blog, which will be 3 in March.
Cool.
But the blog was, anyway, putting myself out there. People read it and they come back and say, "You're so brave for this." And honestly, you're right. I'm not scared of putting it out there. So it's not brave writing. The last piece, the one that's still doing well, which is amazing. That ran in the Huffington Post about finding out that Brian, who had remarried, someone that we both knew, and they were having a baby, and what that was like for me. That piece was terrifying. I was scared to write it.
Why?
Well, one, I reveal some really intimate details about myself, about how I didn't want them to have a baby.
Right.
That's not something that I wanted to admit.
Sure.
I didn't know how I would be viewed for admitting something that is not seen as generous and Brian and I have managed to stay connected during our divorce. We raised our children together. We're still raising them together. And I didn't want to mess with that either. Yeah. It was not just my intimate details of how I didn't want them to have this baby, and I was really adamant about it in my head.
Right.
And they didn't know that. They thought that, whatever I sounded like on the phone when I got the news was how I felt, which I think was all right. But I also revealed intimate details about them. I take you into the hospital room with them, and the conversation that we had is the conversation the three of us had. It wasn't just me.
Right.
Almost all my writing, sorry, I keep touching this, is just about me and my point of view.
Yeah.
And this one was very much about them as well. And I try to make myself a reliable narrator in my stories by exposing as much about myself, if not more, than the other people in the story. And even though I think I did that in this piece, it was still it was scary. And the other thing I was scared of was that people would view her in a negative way.
Sure.
And that's happened before with some of my writing. She's been amazing. She has said, write your story, write whatever you want.
Yeah.
But people who think they're kind of supporting me by tearing her down.
Right.
That's not supportive to me at all.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. So how do you? I mean, that's one. We talk about editing, right? That's one piece. Is that obviously you're bearing these things about yourself, but you're also bearing details about other people around you, or you may not be writing about Scott, but he's connected.
Write about Scott.
Right. Yeah. But I'm saying even when you aren't, right? Like that's connected to him.
Yeah.
And so
yeah.
how do you make those decisions? If the fear isn't about revealing yourself, right? But how do you make those decisions where it impacts other people?
That's a really good question. I've looked around for the answers to that. I've talked to other memoirists. I've been to 2 or 3 writers' conventions and gone to the memoir panels and asked that exact question of the people on the panel.
Yeah.
The answer is always the same. You just write your experience. You cannot worry about the impact. And if you're really worried, then you don't write the story. But you can't write part of it. You can't write it and filter it out and try to manage it. Once it's out there, it's out there.
When have you been surprised at the reactions to your writing and your stories?
Oh, every time I've had something published, I've been blown away. Like, particularly this last piece. To get a letter or an email from the editor on New Year's Day saying, by the way, your piece had over 1 million views last month, making it the most viewed piece of December. Cool. Like, and it feels so separate from me.
Right.
I wrote it in October, November, got it to her at the beginning of December. She published it. She bought it right away, but she published it 2 weeks later. But I feel like I haven't had a relationship with that piece for a long time.
Yeah, sure.
And now it's kind of out there living a life of its own. It's seeing people, making friends, taking pictures.
Yeah.
And So it's surreal and surprising and amazing. It's odd. It doesn't feel like it's my accomplishment.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know why that is, because I wrote it, but
Well,
I
I
don't
think
know.
there's something to that time lag.
Yeah.
Right. And and we see this with all artists,
Mm-hmm.
right? That you create something and then it takes on a life.
Yeah.
And in some ways it holds you, I don't want to say it holds you back like in a negative sense, but it pulls you back to that time of creation.
Yeah.
Where like, I'm sure you've written a whole bunch of things since then and you've kind of moved on creatively, but yet you're still living.
Yeah. I mean, I haven't written a whole bunch of things since then, but
Okay.
I'm writing, and the writing is not there anymore.
Right.
Like that story's
Exactly.
done. It's
Exactly.
filed. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's surprising. It's cool. Like from my dad, when he's on Facebook and he sees it and
That's
he's,
cool.
like, Laura, I'm so proud of you. Like that's cool. My mom too.
Nice.
Like that's the cool part.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
And Scotty, he's very proud.
What did you learn back when you had a PR company that you're using today?
Well, one of the biggest things I learned that I'm using today is that you're pitching a person and not an outlet or a newspaper.
Right.
So to make sure that you are, or that I am, familiar with, have a relationship with, I am being respectful and that I've done my research before I go in to anybody to ask them to look at anything, publish anything, anything is the person and not, because that was a big mistake that I made in the beginning.
Back then.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think someone told that to me. I don't know, or maybe I figured it out, but I'm absolutely using that now. I have an idea, I want to put it out there, and I need to not just what outlet, but who is the best person to help me tell the story, who's the best person to help me get this out there. In editors, the other thing that I learned then that I'm using now is that editors are people, and they need, editors needed publicists,
Sure.
right, to
Right.
bring them stuff. There's
Yeah.
a relationship there. It's not a hierarchy, even though it could be.
Yeah.
And the same thing with journalism, with me writing. Editors need these great stories.
Sure.
So to, kind of take that out of it, it helps me because then I'm not so, I'm not cowed or, servile when I'm coming to people with something.
Right.
And I think that is helpful. I think there's a level of respect then
Yeah.
that, and it also is like, if it doesn't happen, it doesn't happen, and I don't have to take it personally.
That one
because-
seems tricky because you're pitching yourself, right? Whereas in,
Yes.
before
Yes,
you were
I was
pitching
pitching
somebody
other
else,
people.
you could always blame the
Yeah.
client,
Yeah.
right? Like, or the work.
Yeah.
So now,
But now maybe it's not a good fit, or it's not a good time for this story.
yeah.
I mean, I have a rejections file that's tremendous.
Mhm.
It's huge.
Mhm.
And, Scott and I, at one point before the Brave Magic piece got published, we were just kind of laughing about it. So I'd be like, in my email every day, there's another rejection.
Yeah.
Some of them were really nice. Most of them weren't. Most of them were, form letters.
Yeah, of course.
Boilerplates.
Yeah.
And then I get these couple
I only
of
kept
hits.
one.
You only kept one?
Yeah, I got one signed by Mike Ovitz saying,
Oh, yeah.
thanks, but no thanks.
Oh.
It was nice,
You got to keep that.
Yeah,
though.
I kept that one.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's, I don't know. They're rejecting my work, but it's not, I don't know. I don't think of it like it's not good enough. I just think of it like, or at least that's what I'm thinking now. Maybe if I get more rejections later on, it'll feel differently. But right now, it's just like, I'm so grateful, honestly, if anybody looks at it.
Yeah.
Like if I get a letter back where they've actually read it,
Yeah, sure.
I really am, honestly, it's like that, it's an honor to be nominated kind of thing. Like
Yeah.
it really is,
Yeah.
just to be considered.
Yeah.
For me at
Yeah.
this point.
So what's the goal now? So I know you're launching a podcast, which I want to know
Yes.
about.
Yes.
Um,
The only one in the room.
the only one in the room.
Yeah. Yeah.
Tell me about the show.
So the only one in the room will be when I wrote the Brave Magic piece, which was about being the only black person at a 600-person retreat. The responses and comments I got from people afterward were not from black people, but
Right.
from people who had felt othered because of a variety of reasons. And I decided that was going to be the theme of my podcast. Was when have you felt othered? When were you the only one in the room? What's that experience like for you?
Okay.
And it can be, I don't know what yours will be. You'll have to tell me when you're on.
I have plenty of those.
You have plenty of those.
Yeah.
I have a woman who is she's white and married and looks normal as an average to the population, but her severe dyslexia almost cost her everything. And so she's going to be one of my stories. I have another woman who's an actress who grew up mixed race, black and white, in upstate New York, and had a really hard time fitting in with her black relatives, and had this kind of epiphany with the Black Student Union in college, and it's a really great story. We have another person that has transitioned from female to male, and is also in recovery, and did it in the rooms. Like, we all watched him transition, and so different stories like that, and what that experience of being othered is like, and how come it's the worst thing, and how come it's also the best thing, So
Interesting.
that's the podcast. So
That's cool.
I think it's the feedback I'm getting is that it's a great idea, and we'll see how it goes. I'm picking up interview tips from you right now.
What not to do.
No. What to do.
No, that sounds amazing.
Yeah.
I think it's, as you're saying, it's something everyone can relate to. We've all had that. I also think, do you have moments where you just feel like we're all too damn sensitive?
Oh, yes, very much. And it's interesting with the Me Too and the Time's Up movement, which I'm very much in alignment with the idea of both of those two.
Yeah.
But I'm also the mother of two boys, men, 19 and a 20-year-old.
Yeah.
Who I've had to coach every moment that I can get about what they can say and what they can't say to women.
Yeah.
Putting your hand on someone's back or shoulder could be misconstrued and get you charged. And my sons are black.
Right.
So that it's doubly scary.
Yeah.
They are, well, they're mixed race, but they look black. Their friends are like ours were when we grew up. They're all diverse.
Yeah.
But if one of the women that they know who happens to be white has a friend who's around who takes umbrage with what they said or how they said it, or my boys are in trouble.
Yeah.
And then with race too. Like, I am really firm that there are certain words that should just never be said. There are certain experiences that people who haven't had that experience. So if you're talking about the black experience in general, that's okay. But if you're trying to equate your experience as a white person to a black person experiencing, prejudice or hate or fear in America, then you can't do that as the white person. You just can't equate your experience to that experience.
That's so interesting. And you mentioned earlier that the idea that being the other can be both terrible and wonderful.
Yes.
Right. And, that resonates with me very strongly because, for a long time I was, I was a white kid into hip hop. Forget about being a white kid. I was into hip hop as a kid, which for a long time made you the other.
Right.
Right. Because everybody didn't even know about it.
Yep.
Right. So we thought we had this great secret, and then being a white kid into that, and it never occurred to me that I was having the same experience as maybe black kids that were into hip hop at the same time, right?
Yeah.
But I knew it spoke to me, however it spoke to me. And, this wanting to belong, I think, is both innate and very harmful, right? That we, for whatever reason, it's really hard for us to just be.
Yes.
But we'd kind of be better off if we could.
Yeah, but I think there's this really strong pull in us to identify and to belong.
Yeah.
And, and then what we're talking about right now is that separation of race and culture.
Right.
Right? Because culturally, you and I grew up the same.
Right.
Racially, we weren't.
Yeah.
Right?
Sure.
But we had, almost identically.
Right.
Like with the diversity of the cultures, the multiculturalism, and then the culture of hip hop,
Right.
Which is its own culture. And then you're white and I'm black.
Right.
So we can't have the same experience that way, even though we
course.
have all these different experiences that might be exactly the same.
Right.
And that is a societal segregation. Society won't let us connect with race. We can't just be the same because we're different.
Sure.
And we were reminded of that, or black people are reminded of that all the time. I don't think white people are reminded of their race as often as black people are. When I walk into a room, I'm always aware that I'm black.
Yeah.
Right? I just am. I walk into this room and I'm like, okay, I'm the only black one here. It's all right, but I'm going to notice it.
Sure.
He started noticing when I'm the only black one in the room. Like, we'll go into a room and he'll be like, 2.
Right.
And I'm like, yeah, hon, that's right. There are 2.
Yeah, but and that's not wrong. But also, like, so there's 2. Go talk to the other guy. Probably a very different experience than what you've had.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
And I think that's true. And I guess, not that we're going to solve this or that it even matters, my opinion on it, but I find it interesting that, if I'm a white guy walking into a room full of white people, there's this assumption that we're all the same.
Yes.
And that's bullshit.
Yes.
Right? That, I probably have very little in common with a lot of those people, usually. Sometimes more than others. And yeah, on some level we've shared the same race experience. Although not, because I'm Jewish and I grew up in a black neighborhood and I had friends of all cultures and all these things, right?
Yeah.
So, but again, it's that pull to walk into a room and feel like you belong.
Yeah.
And that's not wrong, but it's harmful.
It is. For me, I sacrificed a lot of who I was in order to do that. Right. Which is what we're talking
exactly.
about. It was very harmful for me.
Yeah.
And, I until I got into recovery, I didn't even know it was something I could break out of.
Yeah.
Something that I could do differently, see differently.
Yeah.
Be differently.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like a super harmless version is when my kid was young, we had this dad's day, like all the moms and kids that played together invited all the dads, and I was wearing a Giants hat, and I hate baseball. Sorry to all the baseball fans. I think
no offense here.
I just think it's the stupidest sport, and I can't stand it. But I'm from San Francisco, and I rep the Giants, right? So I'm wearing a baseball hat, and this dad walks up to me wanting to talk about last night's game, and I just sized this guy up in 2 seconds. I was like, we just have nothing in common.
He's had that experience so much.
Yeah, I'm sure. And this poor bastard was trying to bond, and it's not his fault, right?
Right.
It's my fault for wearing something that I don't care about. But that was a great example of just like, this is not my room. But that's okay too.
Yeah.
I just ran off with my kid and did our thing.
Well, I just think you're talking about, like, we use race to protect culture.
Yeah.
Like that's the real thing, and the identifier is white people.
Yeah.
They walk into a room of white people and identify.
Right.
And then we go baseball.
That's right.
Like. And male.
But the
male.
is we're all
sure.
the same.
That's right.
We're protecting our culture, and it's a really sticky place, right? It's
yeah.
Like, the diversity of this country, at this time is culture is becoming a much grayer zone.
Mm-hmm.
And I think some people are really scared of it, of losing that cultural identity.
That's right.
And I always say to her, like, you'll know where your bias is when your kid shows up with a partner from another race,
Mm-hmm.
and then you found your bias, because you can say,
Sure.
I'm all this until you have it standing right in front of you.
Yeah, sure.
No.
So it's a really, I think that the hip hop is such a great example, because it really transcended, your story, great,
Right.
transcended culture.
Yeah.
You're like, I just like hip hop.
Right.
And that was the beginning of a real change
Mhm.
in America, because now it's like, what? Of the top 50 songs in the world,
It's at least
Yeah,
half.
I mean, it's
hip-hop, right?
Yeah,
it's permeated everything.
absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so when I have to get to a lightning round before we get out of here,
Okay.
but so when's the show launching?
We are hoping for March.
Nice.
Yeah. Yeah. So
And where are we going to find it?
where are we going to find it, hon? You have to ask my producer.
Okay.
Yeah. iTunes,
Okay.
Spotify.
Cool.
Mm-hmm.
Everywhere.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're going to put it out the most accessible format we can get in.
Awesome.
Yeah.
And then beyond the show, what's the goal? Are you still writing a book? Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So the book that I was writing, apparently the idea of this book is too broad.
Okay.
It covers too much. So right now I'm working on retooling it and making it so more of just a Black woman's fight through addiction for her children,
Mm-hmm.
kind of a Black When a Man Loves a Woman. Remember that movie?
Yeah, of course.
There hasn't been another one of those movies since, was that 2002 maybe?
Yeah, something like that.
When that one was out, and there hasn't been a movie about like with anything other than a white lead about addiction and recovery.
Really?
And this would, divorce and marriage and all of that.
Yeah.
And the beginning of a new hopeful romance, but that'll probably end when Scotty comes into the picture.
So since you've taken all these classes and studied and you're learned,
Yes.
what if somebody wants to write a memoir, what should they be doing to learn?
That's a good question. Well, the first thing is to read memoir.
Yeah.
Read as many as you can. Find your niche. Find the writers whose voice you like. When you do a book proposal, they're going to want to know whose voice it is. You're going to have to do a comparison, just like when you're pitching a show or a film. It's a combination of this and this. So read a lot. You have to read the whole time. You just always have to be reading memoir. I also read a lot of articles. I read the Sunday New York Times. I like, I just read, listen as well.
Yeah.
And then once you found your voice, like I like this, and then my voice is right here, this is my niche, then to just start writing. I would take a writing class, I would take a memoir class, but beyond that, you don't have to do that. Yeah. The other thing that I did, which is a really valuable thing, is I found a writer's group.
Okay.
And we used to meet twice a month. Now we just meet once a month.
Yeah.
But having a group of memoirists that are also writing, getting their work out there, that's been invaluable. We read our stuff to each other. We give critique. We edit each other's work.
Oh, wow.
We're support for each other on social media and, in our group.
Nice.
So a writer's group, read memoir, and then, and write just as much as you can. A blog is also really helpful.
Nice.
Because whoever may publish you is going to want to see a body of work.
Yeah, absolutely.
So that's good.
Cool.
Yeah.
All right, let's get to lightning round.
Okay.
What's your favorite city to travel to?
Favorite city to travel to? New York.
Who's your favorite DJ?
Idris Elba.
Nice. I've not seen him DJ, but I understand that he's great. What's the last great book you read?
The last great book I read was I Am Yours by Rima Zaman. She's also going to be a guest on my podcast.
Oh, cool.
It's just come out. I got the galley of it
Nice.
last month. It's amazing. Yeah.
Cool. What movie have you seen the most in your life?
Oh, there are so many I watch over and over again.
Yeah?
Like Love Actually.
Okay. We just saw that last week.
Yes.
It's good.
The Professional.
Uh-huh.
Ghost. Officer and a Gentleman.
Wow.
Terms of Endearment. It's too many.
Those are great.
Yeah.
Those are like real movies.
Yeah, they are.
Yeah. Tell me one.
8 Mile.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah.
Okay.
I love 8 Mile.
Tell me one decision that changed your life forever.
Going to treatment. Yeah.
Complete this sentence. I don't have talent. I have blank.
I don't have talent. I have authenticity.
So if I worked for you, I don't know when's the last time you had somebody work for you, but now you have a
I have a
producer.
housekeeper.
So, okay. I don't know if housekeeping. What's something I would hear you say over and over?
Oh.
Not to the housekeeper.
What do I say to you over and over?
If it's a good idea, you have to do it.
Yeah, that's true. If he came up with the idea, he has to do it.
Yeah.
That's a great idea. That means you get to do it. That is what I say over and over again.
Nice.
Yeah.
Who would you be most excited to learn appreciates your work?
Oh, why am I blanking on her name? I love her. And I can't remember her name. Oh, this is terrible.
It's okay, we can edit out. Take your
Okay.
time.
She wrote Hunger. And she's 560 pounds.
Oh, I have no idea.
Um,
Are you looking it up? Okay, cool.
yeah.
Then we'll do it
She'll
over.
get stuck on it.
I
No,
will
it's
get
fine.
stuck on it. Yeah.
I've never heard of Hunger or this
Oh,
woman.
it's such a good book. Roxane Gay. Yes.
Roxane Gay.
Roxane Gay. Thank you. If she read it and liked something, that would be it. I could put the computer down, the keyboard down. I wouldn't have to write anything else.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, until that happens, where does everyone find you online?
So my blog is lauracathcartrobbins.com. The only one in the room doesn't have a site yet, but will be up and launched soon, and everything will be connected to that same page, so you'll be able to look on lauracathcartrobbins.com and then go to all the other sites from there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, but this podcast is, did you go out and pitch it to someone, or are you doing it strictly on your own?
Yeah, I'm doing it on our own,
Cool.
except for we are meeting with Allison and Christina.
Okay, great.
Yeah, they were sick, or Christina was sick, but we're going to meet with them next week, and that might work out. But if not, we're just going to do it. I took a podcasting class.
You did?
Yeah.
What did you learn in your podcasting class?
Oh, it was so great. I didn't know anything about podcasts. And this is a woman named Anna Scott. She has a show called There Goes the Neighborhood on KCRW. And she took us, a little bit through the technical part, but really just about the important things about finding a topic, knowing who your audience is, what to do so that your audience will tune in, or tune in for the next one, tune in for the next one, tune in for the next one.
Cool.
What not to do. She had us listen to a bunch of podcasts, some which she said, you don't ever want to do this.
Oh,
and then
cool.
some which she said, this is your goal.
Yeah.
Like, these are the podcasts that create the audience. So.
James, we should either teach or take a podcasting class.
Yeah.
Maybe both.
Yeah. You're not on the list.
We're on the list of what not to do.
To do it together?
We do it together, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, you should teach one.
All right.
You should teach one.
Sure.
Yeah.
You start with us.
Yeah. This is the first
You guys
class.
are going to have a great show.
Yeah.
It's going to be awesome.
I
I can't wait.
Yeah, me too.
Thank you again. Come back anytime when the show's huge and you want to promote the book or whatever.
I will. Thank you. And I'm gonna see you next on, not here, but in wherever we're gonna record.
Anytime you want.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love it.
Just keep thinking of your only one in the room story.
Oh, I got it.
You got
No,
it?
that's an
Okay.
easy one.
All right,
and I
good.
actually have not told it to
Yay.
anyone.
We'll
outside
premiere
of-
it
Yeah.
on the podcast.
Sure.
Excellent.
Cool.
Thanks, John. Thanks for having me.
Yo, that was Laura Cathcart Robbins on Rebel Radio. I hope you enjoyed it. I know I did. Leave us a comment, a review on iTunes, on wherever you like. You can hit us on Twitter, on Facebook. It's at Rebel Radio Net. Check out the videos from a lot of our episodes up on our YouTube page at Rebel Radio Net. And most importantly, come back next week for more Rebel Radio. Peace.